Once again, we want to look at the principles of God and the will of God in creation and how He has created things and the perfection of His creation. Because it speaks to us so much of God who really is powerful, who has everything under control. You see, we look at things around us and we see there's no control. That's true. In our realm, things are not doing well. But as far as God is concerned, everything is the way He intended it to be, except for the response of man to His greatness. As I mentioned before, lack of understanding is the destruction of man. If we don't understand the things of God, then we find ourselves struggling and battling. But God has given to us so much. His provision is awesome. Ours is a lack of knowledge. The lack of knowledge is the destruction of mankind. We find ourselves thinking so much of other things that we don't really pay attention to who we are, what God has created us to be, and what His intentions for us are. In Isaiah, and Isaiah is one of the Old Testament writings, very powerful. Isaiah says, "Awake, awake, clothe yourself with strength. Clothe yourself in your beautiful garments." Here is a direction to us. It wasn't only to us, but it was to all. That we should clothe ourselves with strength. Wake up. We're not weak. Wake up. Realize what God has done for you and what He's given to you is not weakness. It is not inability. You are created in His image and likeness. You are His sons, daughters. And He has empowered you to be like Him. Given to us that which is like unto His own abilities, because He's created us to be like Him. We are not Him, but we are to be like Him. Doesn't mean that we will never have a problem, we will never have a difficulty. We will. We'll have those. But He's given us the ability to overcome them, to be greater than they are. This is the hope that we have in Him. Awake, awake, clothe yourself with strength. Now, how do you clothe yourself with strength? You have to go to the gym and work out every day? No, that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about a strength that is within us. It's an emotional situation. It's that stability that is ours in reality, because He created us in strength. When He created man, He gave man authority and power over all things. Cultivate and keep. This was His direction to man. You're in charge. You're in charge. Now, man failed, but yet the creation was that man was to be in authority and to charge. He named all the animals. He had that ability. Very wise, very powerful. God trusted him. He failed, of course, and it brought difficulties to us. But yet in our creation, God created us to be like Him. Clothe yourself with strength. I believe it's an attitude. It's a mental capacity. It's that which is within your heart. You know you're strong. And yet there's a humility there also. There's a balance here. Humility that is not my strength, it's the strength that God has given to me. My dependence is upon Him. Clothe yourself with strength. Don't see yourself as the victim. Don't see yourself as downtrodden. Don't see yourself in difficulty. See yourself with strength. You can conquer. You can overcome. You can rise up because of God in you. Greater is He who is with you than he who is against you. Clothe yourself in your beautiful garments. I think when God created us, He created us to be like Him. He gave to us abilities, potentials. We call them garments, but it's the who we are attitude. The ability to to have hope, joy, and peace in our lives. These are the beautiful garments He's given to us. And they are those things which we need to put our strength in and our confidence in. They will help us overcome. They will help us rise up when we are downtrodden. It will help us be what God intended us to be. Again in Isaiah, in the 51st chapter, it says, "Awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord." Here again, we are functioning because of Him. We are His representation. We are His image and likeness. And so we are to put on the strength that He gives to us, not our strength, His. That's the hope we have in Him. He will not fail us. He will not forsake us. He will not leave us. He says, put on strength. In Psalm 110 it says, "The Lord will stretch forth thy strong scepter from Zion, saying, rule in the midst of thine enemies." Now to me this is a very powerful thing, because in the world today that we live in, many areas are enemies to the things of God. And we have to rule in the midst of them, not be controlled by those enemies, not be put down by those enemies, not be fearful of those enemies, but we are to rule in the midst of them. Now it doesn't mean that we will rule over the enemy, but we rule in our lives so that we are not affected by those things which are against us. They don't cause us anxiety, fear, or stress, because those things cause life to be taken away from us when we live under stress or fear or anxiety. We don't know who holds tomorrow. We don't know what tomorrow will hold for us, but we know who holds tomorrow. Who holds tomorrow? God. He created all of this, all of it. Nothing exists that was not created by Him. That's where our faith is. Man is misusing it. It's not understanding it. Has a lack of understanding in all that God has given to us. We destroy much of what God has done, given to us, by our own lack of understanding or our choices. But God has given much to us. Rule in the midst of your enemies. You can't be discouraged. You can't be fearful. You can't be anxious if you're ruling. I know. God will take care of this. I'm not concerned about it. He can even take those things which are not good and turn them into good. This is the beauty of God. And many times these things that come against us are there for us to realize that greater is He who is with us, and we need to rise up in faith to face them rather than run away from them. Because when we face them, we will find the ability to overcome them. And we will have that peace. We won't be anxious about what tomorrow holds, because we know who holds tomorrow. This is the beauty of what God has given to us. And again, back in Isaiah, in the 60th chapter, as I said, Isaiah is a very powerful message to the church. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. For behold, darkness will cover the earth, and deep darkness the peoples, but the Lord will rise upon you. It says to us, we cannot judge ourselves and our situations by the world around us. We judge ourselves, we set our minds on the things that God has said and given to us. That's what's truth. These other things will pass away. They will not last. Governments pass. Monetary situations pass. They change. But God is still there in the midst of it to bring us through. He said He would supply all of our needs. He's given to us all that we need. But we've been deceived by the world to think we need much more than what we actually really need. And we are in slavery, in bondage, to much of what they're throwing at us for their own benefits, not for us, for them, so that they can have that power, that authority, that ability. We have these cell phones we take with us everywhere we go. We can't go anywhere without our cell phone. We feel like we're naked if we don't have the phone. And we are constantly looking at it, constantly being informed about things happening all around the world. Do these things really affect us? Do they really? But yet we're focusing on all that stuff rather than focusing on what God has given to us and the peace that comes from Him. So Russia and Ukraine are in difficulty. How does that affect us? Well, you say this and that and other things. Well, there could be some effect there, but in reality, that's far away from us. And we can set our hearts and our ability on the peace that God has given to us and the assurance that He is with us and He will not forsake us. And yet we spend how much time listening or reading or talking about what's going on, what's happening there. It doesn't touch us. We don't have any real understanding of it. We are only with knowledge of what's been told us by media or some other sources. We don't know whether they're telling us the truth or not. But the one thing about it, if you know God, and you know His principles, and you know what He's done, that's truth. And that truth will eventually override, will be what God has given to us. Maybe darkness around us, maybe the people are evil, maybe the governments are evil, maybe the world is filled with this, and it is. But in the midst of it, God will rise up on you. You'll have peace. You'll have the ability to overcome and to conquer. You won't be in fear or anxiety. You will know that you don't have to have everything around you in perfection in order for you to have peace and joy. Because that peace and joy comes from God. And even in the midst of the darkness, in the midst of deep darkness, the peace is there. You know, okay, it may be out there, it may be what's affecting much of the world, it may affect our finances, it may affect our government, it might affect this, it might affect that, but still at the same time, there's a peace within. God will take care of us. God's grace, His mercy is awesome. It tells us in John, the 12th chapter, the Gospel of John, walk while you have the light, that darkness may not overtake you. Believe in the light in order that you may become sons of light. In other words, if there's darkness around us, we walk in the light, otherwise that darkness will overcome us. We have to walk. We have to take what God has given to us and live it out. Let it be the part of our life that brings hope and assurance and confidence, stability, strength to us, because it's from God. Greater is He who's with us. We must believe that, and it must be so deeply entrenched within us that even in the midst of difficulties, we will have that hope that He will be there to rescue us and to guide us. I remember as a young boy, many, many years ago, my mother had an accident and was dying, and we received a call in the middle of the night. We were several states away from where she was, and it was wintertime. And my father got us all up so we could get in the car and we could go. And he was anxious to see his mother. And he was driving fast, the roads were icy, and he lost control of the car, and it was facing a truck that was coming from the opposite direction. We were like head on. And my mother, sitting in the front seat, she simply said, "Jesus." And at that moment, things separated. We went past the truck passed us, no accident. In the midst of that darkness, there is that confidence and that trust that we can have in God. He's with us. He can protect us. We want everything to be perfect. But that perfection comes in our relationship with God, our trust in Him, and trust in what He's given to us, so that we can know without a doubt the peace is what comes from Him, and it's going to take care of us. That hope that is ours. Walk. You got to walk in the light. You got to be aware of it and not let the darkness overcome us. Not let it steal from us the provisions that God has given to us. We need that hope, that assurance. Jesus, when He was doing ministry in the New Testament, He was in a synagogue and they gave Him a scroll to read. It was from Isaiah. He said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to preach the gospel and to talk about recovery of sight to the blind." He understood, he had an awareness that he had been given a ministry from the Father. He had a purpose in his life. Because he knew the purpose of his life, he was not intimidated or threatened with the other things that were happening to him. They tried to stone him, they tried to push him off the cliff at times. The religious leaders at that time were opposing him, they were fighting against him, and yet he had a ministry to the people. And he ministered in the midst of all of that difficulty. He was not fearful or anxious. He knew who he was. He understood his mission. And he spent his time in that short time, 3 years perhaps, but yet he knew what he was here for. He was willing to just stand in that confidence. And we would say, but yes, but he was the Son of God. Are you not the same? You're not Jesus, true. You're not the Christ, true. But you are the Son of God. Know you not that you are the temple of God, that the Spirit of God dwells within you, the same as with Him. And there's ability for us to really stand firm in that which He has given to us. It must be that we put our faith in that, our confidence in that. And he says to us in John 10:10, and I've mentioned this before, and I talk a lot about this because I believe that it's very important for us to understand. He said, "I have come that you might have life, and that you might have it in fullness or in abundance." Now that was His purpose, one of His purposes of coming, because life had been stolen from them by the enemy. Man was in anxiety and stress. Man had lost hope. He did not have life, but life comes from God. He's the source of life. And Jesus came that we might have that life, that we might have it to its fullest. We have our own understanding of what we think life is, what we want it to be. But yet at the same time, we must have an awareness of what God intended it to be. That life is the likeness of Him in us. That ability, that provision, that hope, that strength, that peace, that joy, that understanding comes from Him and Him alone. That's life. Life is not a lot of money. Life is not a big house. Life is not a big job, an important job, making a lot, or a very important social status. That's not life. Life is that confidence, that peace, that assurance that is within us. You may have a lot of money and still be stressed out and have high blood pressure or heart attack because you put your trust in that which you cannot find hope in. Money changes. They're working now worldwide on changing the whole financial system of the world to digital instead of paper money that we have now. They want to do it differently so that maybe they can have more control. But whatever it is, doesn't matter. If you have your confidence in God, even though the things of the world change, God doesn't change. His provisions for you, His strength for you, His love for you does not change. He loved you so much and loved me so much that He was willing to give His only Son to become like us so that He could redeem us. He was willing to do that for us. He knew that at the end it would be His death. He would suffer. But He suffered so that we would not be controlled by the enemy any longer. We could be set free. That was the peace He had. That was the assurance that was His. He had that confidence. And it's a confidence that you and I must need also. We must have that assurance that we know God. You say, well, how do I know this? How can I get this? Jesus said, I am the bread of life. Life requires sustenance, energy, nourishment. How do I get that nourishment? You get that nourishment by knowing God, by knowing Christ, feeding on Him, feeding on His provision, knowing what He's given to us, because these words that come from Him are powerful. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. This Word becomes our life, the flesh that we need. But we have to know Him. If we know who we are, if we know what He's done to create us and to make us what we are, we can be firm in that. We know this is my God. This is who He created me to be. And that's what we'll be. We don't let the things around us steal that. Remember what it says in John 10:10. The devil comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. He doesn't want you to have peace. He doesn't want you to have confidence. He doesn't want you to have joy. He will give you temporary things to substitute, but they won't last. They won't last. You go out on a party with your friends and you drink too much, and instead of being joyful, you wake up in the morning with a headache, you have heaviness, you have a bad feeling about it. That's not what God would give you. God gives us the peace that is stable, the joy that is always there. Doesn't have to have happy things perfect to have the joy. The joy is that confidence, that assurance, that stability, that we have peace in Christ. Never mind what's going on around us. It'll pass away. Only the things of God will last. That's the hope we need to have deeply entrenched within us. This is who we are. Christ, He says, I am the bread of life. Eat on me. Eat the things that I've given to you. Forget the news. Forget all the other things. Spend time knowing Him, feeding on Him, so that that Word becomes flesh and it dwells within us. It brings the assurance to us. It sets our heart and it sets our mind in a situation wherein, regardless of what's going on, we have the assurance, the confidence, the peace. If we know something, we can handle it. We can take care of it if we are that stable. Yes, the winds may blow, the waves may be high, but look at Christ. He could walk on the waves. He could calm the storm. Why? Because He knew who He was. He had that authority. He said to His disciples, all authority in heaven and earth has been given unto me. Then He turned right around and commissioned them to go out under that authority. This is the authority He's given to us, that we can be in dominion and rule in the midst of our enemies. Not ruling the things around us, but ruling our own lives, so that we are not affected, or pulled down, destroyed by the things around us. Okay, so there's a problem. It isn't my problem because I walk with God. And if we were walking the way God intended us to walk, the problems in the world would become less and less because we would be affecting them. And that's what we were supposed to do. Christ came to change the provisions of man back to that which God had given in the beginning. He came to restore. He came to disarm the enemy, to destroy the works of the enemy, all the deception that he put upon man. And we don't have to live under those deceptions anymore. We can have our hope in God. We can have that peace in Him. You remember in one of the first videos I mentioned a book that was written by a medical doctor, Inward Pulse, how that this doctor was evaluating 2 patients, not just 2, but in a comparison of what he was talking about, he was talking 2 people with the same diseases, same problems, physical problems, at a point of death. One dies, one survives. And he said, I had to study this, I had to find out what it was. And the one who would survive had the right attitude, had a confidence. And he said it's something that comes from the inside, not defeat, not fear, not anxiety, but assurance. I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. And he survived. The one that had the fear, the anxiety, didn't make it. I believe that speaks to us something of a spiritual character that God has given man. That even though we find ourselves in difficulties, we can conquer, we can overcome if the attitude is right. You have that peace, that assurance, not anxious, not stressful. Yes, got a problem, but that problem will go away. I'm going to keep going the right direction. And if we keep going the right direction, soon the other things are gone. One time, someone was speaking with me and said, had a migraine headache. It was just giving them such trouble, and they said, I have these things over and over again. And I just talked to them for a minute, and I said, let me just show you something. You have a migraine headache. You have a friend that you haven't seen for years, a very close friend of yours, that comes to visit you. You have a migraine headache. You start talking with that friend. You start communicating. Pretty soon, the migraine headache is gone. Is that not true? She said, yeah, it's true. Why? Because you set it aside. You set your course on a different manner, a different area, a different situation. And it went away. Some would say it's mind over matter. I'm not talking about mind over matter. I'm talking about faith in what God has given to us. He has created us. He created us in perfection. We have that. It belongs to us. It's ours. It's ours. But if we don't know about it, we don't use it, then we find ourselves lacking in so much. He is the bread of life. We need to understand that. It says, in Him was life, and that life was the light of men. This is what is ours. We know Him. We have the revelation with Him. We know what He has done for us and what He's given to us. We are living in it. We're letting it be alive in us. Then it will become that which brings light to us. The assurance, not in darkness, but we walk in the light that God has given to us. He says, come to me to have life. Here's where we get our source of life. The life doesn't come from the world. It doesn't come from a great job or a great social position. People praising me, giving honor to me, lifting me up and talking good things about it. They won't give me life. Life comes from Christ. God is the source of life. There is no other source of life. Science today is trying to duplicate life. They can't do it. They won't be able to do it because life comes only from God. They think that they can just be whatever they want to be, but they're limited. Only God has all that power, and God is the source of life. Come to me and have life. I am the bread of life. And that's something I want you to understand. I can teach you, I can bring some thoughts to you, but that's not enough. You need to spend time with God, reading His Word, meditating on it, hiding it in your heart, so that you will not do the things that are not to be done. Our faith is in Him. In Romans, Christ was raised from the dead, so that we too might walk in newness of life. The author that God gives to us is life. This is ours. Life. It's ours. And that's what we have if we feed on Him. Feed on Him. Set other things aside. Put Him as the source of our life. I hope that this will help you begin to see that there is joy, there's peace, there's provision from God, and it's for you. He loves you, and He's given to you all that you need. So until next week, have the peace of Christ reigning and ruling in your life, that the joy of God might be yours.